Hello everyone. This story takes place in 1993 and a long time ago now, but I still wonder just how much did happen to us in a few months. The year had started well enough. Family and careers were moving in the right direction, and our house in Sherwood Forest was a very pleasant place to live. There was a walled garden, an established orchard, and an interesting cottage which we'd painstakingly restored. It was a difficult place to leave, but each summer we set off for a month on the continent, both to enjoy the better weather and to give the boys a chance to learn something about other countries. We always arranged the ferry crossing, and the boys then decided the actual destination. The same question was asked of them in the first night in Calais. Well, where do we go this year? They would produce the maps and explain the route, and we'd set off for France or Austria or the Alps, or on the year when the wall came down, to Berlin and East Germany. Eventually, we decided that a camper van might be used more throughout the year, and we treated ourselves to a brand new one. The vans varied markedly in price and design, but something the salesman said in passing struck a note, and we were swayed by his advice. This one is more expensive, but it has a reinforced steel frame at the back and is useful in any rear-end collision. Most vans are built on a chassis and virtually collapse if hit hard. With 3 children, this would be the safer option. A few days later, we set off for Calais and a walking tour in the Harz Mountains in Germany. The weather was fine, the new van really convenient, and we had a superb time walking, swimming, and exploring the newly accessible East German countryside. However enjoyable the break, each year when the time came to return home, everyone wanted to get back as quickly as possible to see the dogs, the house, the garden, and to pick up on normal routines. We made good time to the port and decided to cross on the late night ferry. I've not felt this fit for a long time, I said to my wife, Rosemary. Hiking in those mountains has certainly done me some good. The drive to the Channel port had been long and tiring, and as we motored up the M11, we decided it would be sensible to rest for a while. We parked in a large lay-by, some 20 meters from the road, and settled down for a few hours. I lay on the back bunk with my head towards the rear of the vehicle, with my arm around our youngest son. A well-stuffed cylindrical traveling cushion was moved out of the way and finished up between my head and the outside skin of the van. Rosemary and the other 2 sons were nearer the front of the camper van. We'd barely got to sleep when a tremendous explosion rocked the van and brought cupboards, pots, and side panels crashing down. A cutting pain jarred my whole body, and for a few seconds, I was paralyzed and couldn't move hands or feet. I thought initially that a gas cylinder had somehow gone up, but then realized that a hot engine was a few inches from my head and knew that someone had crashed into us. Petrol was running down into my mouth, and I could see through the steam and the wreckage that it was spurting from a fuel pump, which was still working. A bloodied, bemused face appeared in the shattered windscreen. "Turn your effing ignition off," I yelled, and was then overcome with intense anger. I tried to get at him through the debris. "Lie still, don't move. You might have damaged your spine," said my wife, using more common sense. "I'll get help." In those days, we had no mobile phone, and Rosemary ran to a nearby farmhouse to summon help. Police and emergency services were quickly on the scene, and as I was being removed from the wreckage, I heard one fireman say, "The steel frame on the back of this van definitely saved those folks, that's for sure." Look at the metal embedded in that cushion. The drunk driver, who it turned out had already been banned from driving and was in a stolen car, was arrested and later served a prison sentence. I was gently strapped to a stretcher and whisked off to a hospital in Cambridge. Luckily, a top spinal specialist from New Zealand was there preparing a talk for a conference later in the day, and he examined me. He diagnosed that the sixth vertebrae was broken, but he added, "You may just get lucky and we can fix it." I was tightly trussed up and placed in a side ward. Every few hours, a 6-person team came, lifted me and turned me around a few degrees, like a pig being roasted on a spit. I was given prismatic glasses to make reading or watching television possible whilst lying flat on my back, but the days seemed endless. One welcome break to the monotony came when a nurse informed me that I could try some solid food. She placed oxtail soup and a finely shredded salad on the bed tray over my chest and then disappeared. The dexterity required to eat soup or shredded salad lying flat on the back whilst peering through prisms would test the skills of the most able NASA astronaut, so I had no chance. Within minutes, the pillars and the bed looked like a muddy compost heap. I wondered why they didn't just bring me a sandwich. A few weeks later, sitting at home wearing the stiff plastic collar, I got up a little too quickly from the chair, pushed off with my arm, and managed to dislocate the right shoulder. An old rugby injury. I was very familiar with the pain and the likely treatment which would follow. Rosemary rushed me to the local hospital, and as I was being wheeled down to the theatre, a nurse saw me smiling and said, "Most people are not too happy coming along this corridor. What do you find so amusing?" I can't believe I'm going under the lights again. 2 nights on, this time with the neck brace and the right arm strapped in a sling, a dull thump reverberated through the cottage. It felt like something heavy had fallen upstairs. Soon the doorbell went, and an 18-year-old girl and her brother stood there looking visibly shaken. "I've just spun off the road and crashed into your garage." "Is anyone hurt?" I asked, behaving like a benevolent uncle. "No, we're both okay." "Don't worry," I said. "Everything can be sorted out." I followed them up the drive. When the light went on in the garage, a scene of devastation faced us. The girl's car had demolished the gable end and had wedged itself into the side of my 3-litre Pride and Joy. Bricks and rubble covered the bonnet and the roof. Nails and tools which had been fired from the workbench were embedded in the panels. Rosemary's car fared little better. It looked like it had been in a bomb blast. I'm ashamed to say I then metamorphosed from a benevolent uncle into a ranting, raving loon. Haranguing an 18-year-old after she had wrecked her car and been in her first accident was not my finest hour. But standing there in a neck brace and sling, I somehow felt better for it. In 2 months, we had gone from never making an insurance claim to calling on our health insurance, claiming for major repairs to 3 vehicles, rebuilding of the garage, and replacement of the equipment and content in the garage. The only policy we didn't call on was the pet insurance. I had to phone the various companies so many times it was not, "Do you have a policy number, Mr. Salisbury?" but, "Hi, Bob, how are things going? Dog's still okay?" It was good to be home. Thank you.
Oh, Bob, well done. Brilliant. What a nightmare, though.
Yes, I mean, looking back, it's hard to think that it all happened in such a short time. it was one thing after the other. But the nice thing was when Rosemary and I were talking about it, that we were very resilient. You know, we kept just ploughing on and saying we can get over all of this. And it was, we just put it down as one of those things that may happen in life, and you've got to get on with it and sort it. And I have to say, humor always helps. You know, life is funny, isn't it, sometimes? And we found that looking at the hospital and the wreckage and all that and having a smile about it, it seemed to help things. There were some things I didn't like. I mean, I mentioned the petrol pouring into the mouth, but also the other side of the mouth was German wine. We'd got some very good German wine in the back of the camper van, and the impact smashed some of that. We were not very happy about that too much. So wine in one corner of the mouth and petrol in the other. You know, you have to smile, really.
Well, I have to say, my experience of German wine, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Oh, oh no, there's some, you've got to know where to look for it, you know.
I can hear Rosemary in the background there. She, of course, was
she was our wine expert. So
she was also the most sensible person in that camper van. From
yes,
the
definitely. That's certainly the thing. The other thing that's of interest, I think, the surgeon gave me the X-rays, and he said, "You're a very cheerful chap. You're not a man that will get down." He said, "But if you ever do look at these X-rays, store them somewhere behind a cupboard, because you came within a few millimeters of a real disaster." So they're still behind the cupboard. I've never had them out yet, but they're there if times get really bad.
Well, you see, if you were Richard O'Leary, you would have produced those X-rays halfway through your story, along with everything else. But that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Do you still have any nagging, like, pain? Do you ever, do you wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, that's the rugby injury. Oh, that's the car crash"?
Occasionally, but get out, have a walk around with the dogs, and it goes off. And
when you're 80, Paul, it's good to have pain. At least you know you're still alive.
Yeah. She's very sympathetic.
Rosemary, the voice from the wings.
That's right. I have a lighter glass these days as well.
Well, I have to say, Bob, when you told me before Christmas that you were 80, I was very surprised. If that's any kind of, hi, Rosemary.
Hello, Paul.
If that's any consolation to you. Well, it's great to see you. Thank you very much. Wonderful story to end the evening. So thank you. And I mean, it's been a wonderful evening of stories at home, told at home. We had young Raymond, who wasn't quite the innovative genius he imagined. Richard took us on the final journey his Mervyn would make to get home. Nan introduced us to the island of Egg, which will always feel like home. And then we had Jared, who gives a snapshot into his home life and into Bobby, the Rasputin of Goldfish. Then Podrick had a house guest who drove him to sexual abandon, while David had us in the care home with the incorrigible Margaret, who loved to chat. Gita invited us to a deathbed scene full of pain, beauty, and love, while Bob took us on a road trip home that ended in disaster and destruction, and still we got a laugh. So brilliant, brilliant evening of stories. Folks, you're amazing.